Welcome to my podcast story, the show where podcasters share the real journey behind their voices, from their first mic check to their biggest milestones. Every episode reveals the lessons, challenges, and breakthrough that shape a podcast star's journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I can't wait for you to hear today's story. Tell us your name and what you do.
My name is Andrew Lewin, and I am the host of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast.
How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Okay. What's the podcast about? Strange.
It's about ships. It's about ships. It's about the ocean. And so I am a marine biologist, and I talk about the ocean. So it's a very wide array of topics surrounding ocean conservation. So the reason why I started it was, 10 years ago when I started it, I said, not a lot of people know what's happening with the ocean.
Yeah.
A lot of the problems that are happening, some of the solutions that are available. And I was going to all these conferences for my job, and I was meeting these great people who had wonderful stories about the projects they were doing that weren't readily available. People didn't get access to those types of stories. So I was like, you know what? It'd be really great if I did like an interview style show where I could, put these people on a platform and be able to share their stories. And that's what I did. So I started off as an interview show, and then it quickly moved into a mix of solo episodes and interview episodes. And I changed it from like 1 episode a week to 3 episodes a week, to actually went to 1 episode a week to 5 episodes a week, down to 3 episodes a week, then to 7 episodes a week.
Wow.
And then now I'm back down to 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How to protect the ocean. I love this name. Like, I think, why does it feel like you were, when you came up with the name, I'm curious, how did you come up with the name? Was it that you're like, I'm tired of explaining things to people. Let me just give them a name like How to Protect the Ocean. Some people don't have to ask me, what's your podcast about?
Well, in a way, yes. Like, that's what I was, but that wasn't the first name of the podcast.
Okay.
The first
What was
name
the first name
of the podcast was Speak Up for Blue, which is still like very mysterious in a way where people are like, I don't even know what your podcast is about.
What's
right?
that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I thought, because what I wanted to do was speak up for the ocean. So I was like, oh, let's do Speak Up for the blue. And then I started like, I've been doing this for 10 years. So I started to, as you do a podcast, you start to learn from other people. You start to hear what other people are doing. You hear a little bit about SEO, search engine optimization, and be like, how do I get more people to listen? Like, I had people listening, but I'm always looking, you always want to grow your show. And so what I did is I actually just was like, okay, how can I make this show like even easier? So what I would do, I'd go into Apple Podcasts, because that was where I was getting most of my views, and I would type in ocean, and my podcast didn't come up. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then I heard somebody say, well, yeah, you have to have the keyword in your title at the very least. And I was like, well, I don't have ocean in my title at all. So I went from Speak Up for Blue to Speak Up for the Ocean Blue. And then I started, getting into these like ocean tag words, and my show started to grow a little bit more. And then I talked to somebody else, this was for a number of years. Then I talked to somebody else about 5 years ago, and they said, or even less than that, and they were like, I still don't know what your show's about. What is your show about? And I was like, well, it's How to Protect the Ocean. He goes, there's your title, How to Protect the Ocean. I'm like, pretty simple. And it gets to the point. I was like, all right. And then I'm a scientist. I experiment. And so this has been, a series of experiments, from name of the show to frequency of publishing to everything. And I think it's just interesting how things develop,
When you came up with the name How to Protect Your Ocean, because a lot of the times when we get simple solutions, I don't know if it's a resistance, but you were like, well, this is just too simple.
Yeah. I didn't like it at first. I was like, are you sure? Like, that sounds really simple.
Yeah.
But, what's interesting too is I saw, at the time, over that time, I saw a channel on YouTube, and I think it was just called How To. And it was just like a series of videos that shows you how to do things. And so I was like, well, this, everybody wants to know, like when people search up stuff, they want to find out something, how to do this. Why is this happening? What is happening with this? And so I was just like, this seems really, it's basic, but it gets to the point right away. And let them understand what's happening in the episode or for the whole podcast as they listen to more and more episodes. And so, you bring them in with the simple name, but right to the point, and then you say, okay, how does this relate to everything that I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well, while you were explaining what the podcast is about, you did mention that you started the podcast 10 years ago. I'm not sure if I heard you right.
That's right. It was 10 years in June 22nd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It started
That's
June
fantastic.
22nd, 2015.
Wow.
It's been a while, but I'll tell you though, wisdom is I didn't start recording the podcast. I started recording the podcast in 2014. So I never published until 2015. And I'll tell you why. It was because I was scared. I had fear like you wouldn't believe. And it's also because like at the time, I started to get into science communication back in like 2010, 2011, right around the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And I started to see how other scientists and how news agencies were looking to scientists to bring the information to them. It was a huge thing over in the Gulf of Mexico, like just in the Gulf states, like south of Mississippi, south of Louisiana, and so forth. I'm in Canada, but everybody was watching it. And like in North America, because it was one of the biggest oil spills in North America. And I watched like colleagues of mine go to the Gulf, like from California, from, New York, and go down to the Gulf of Mexico and basically team up with news agencies to bring in information of what was happening, what were the consequences, what to look out for, all that kind of stuff. And it really made me think to myself at the time, was like, I should be talking about this, because there's a lot of people who are going to have questions in my circles, like family and friends, and also just like outside of those circles. Social media was starting to get bigger and bigger at the time. This is 2010. So Facebook and Twitter were like the main focus points. And so I started to write blogs and do all that kind of stuff. And then I went to YouTube to start like a show, not a podcast, but a show. And then I was like, I don't like editing video that much. It takes up a lot of time. I had toddlers at the time. And so I was like, all right, let's go to podcasting. And because somebody introduced me to podcasting, and I was like, I really like this. I started recording, and I was a little afraid when I started to record, because nobody talked about science back then. Even within the science community, we weren't told to talk to like the general public about it. And I was like, you know what? I really want to do this, but I'm afraid of what other scientists, like, my colleagues, my mentors would say about it. And after I finally pushed the button to publish, that's when people started, I didn't get people talking to me as much. So I'm like, oh, this is okay. Nobody's saying anything bad. They're not really saying anything, but nobody's saying anything bad. Yeah. So I might as well, continue to do this. And then after when I published about 8 or 9 episodes, I'm like, I'm in. I'm all in on this. I love this. And I upgraded my microphone. I just went 5 days a week after that. I did 4 solo episodes.
Is this mic I'm looking at the upgraded microphone, or?
No, the upgraded one was this one here. I think the one you're using, SM7B. I used this one for a long time. But I didn't like it popped, like the plosives. So I didn't like it as much. Still a great microphone. And then I got this used from another podcaster, and I like the sound off of it better. And I've been using that since. So
right now, I'm sad that I'm not in the same state as you. I would have just come and picked that mic so that I can be touching. It can live to its full potential. Because right now it's just doing nothing. Well, it is.
Oh, I use it. I use it when I do like remote interviews, or if I go out of my office to do the interviews. I love the mic, and I used it probably for about 6 years. I used it. Wow. So it got its money. I got my money's worth.
I got its money worth. Wow. Yeah, that's the thing I love about podcast gears, is that usually most of the times, if you're not fighting with the gear, they do last.
Yeah.
Like, they last.
Yeah, I take care of it. I don't like bring it too far out. I don't bring it into areas where there's water or anything like that. I protect it. You got to protect it. You spend that much money, you got to protect it.
Yeah. Wow. You talked about you not knowing what the reception of the podcast would look like. And at episode 8, 9, you were like, oh yeah, I'm so done this. I'm going to start a podcast. At what point in time did you feel like, I'm a podcaster? Like I'm a that's my type. That's who, like,
yeah,
that's who I am.
It took me a while. I think, oh my gosh, I don't even know when I first started to say, yeah, I'm podcasting, because I always did it as a hobby, right? It was always like extra as a part of like above my job. I always wanted to do it full time, but it's always been like a hobby to me. And so, but it probably not till about 7 or 8 years in did I actually start describing myself as a podcaster. Other people would describe me as a podcaster, but I never really thought to myself like, oh yeah, this is what I do. I podcast. I don't know why. I just never thought about it. But I started to really feel legitimate when about after in 2016, so after a year, I got invited to go to a conference, a science conference in Newfoundland. And so I flew over there on my own dime. I rented another one of these mics, and then I brought my laptop, and I knew how to, I only knew how to record one way. We didn't have Riverside or anything like that back then. And I basically, the director of communications for the podcast or for the conference had heard one of my podcasts before, where I had a co-host who we covered his journal article, so his story, like his study. And so he had been listening to it ever since and loved it. And so he invited me out there, set me up in a hotel room that had like a living room space. And he basically said, okay, you're going to interview people here. We've got a bunch lined up. And I have to admit, I probably did about 4 to 5 interviews per day during the conference. So I did about 3 days where I did about almost 15 people. Yeah. And it was great. Like, people loved it. You know, it was very it's a very laid back kind of style of interview, and just fun. And, you know, we got into it. We got to geek out on various scientific things. And, you know, I understand, like, I've done the field work. I've done studies. I've done a master's degree. You know, I can relate to a lot of the people, but I'm also like, I'm very excited to learn what they have to bring. I'm very excited to dive into their story and to dive into their personal story too. Because one of the things I wanted to get out of this was people are, and still happens, people don't like scientists. They think we're like elitists. They think we're above everybody because that's the narrative that's been pushed on them. So I wanted people to get to know every scientist that I've had, every conservationist that I've had on the podcast, because I think it's important that people know that, hey, you know what? A lot of these people, they just love the ocean so much that they're willing to dedicate their careers to it, but they're also just regular people. You know, we don't get paid big money. We don't get paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars every year. You know, a lot of us get paid very little, but we love the job that we do. And so I wanted that story to come out in each and every interview that I do. I still do it to this day, to find out more about the people who are on the podcast itself.
Well, other than the fear from before I even ask you this question, the podcast is called How to Protect Your Oceans. Do you talk about lakes, rivers, ponds?
You know, I do. It's a good question. I do. I'll talk about lakes. I won't do a full story on lakes and rivers unless it has to do with the ocean, but they're very much a part of the whole system. You know, for a lot of us, like, I live in Ontario, Canada, where I'm surrounded by the Great Lakes, and I'm not surrounded by an ocean. So, you know, obviously the Great Lakes have a huge influence on, you know, just my daily work and I've done work in the Great Lakes and so forth. So I do talk about lakes and rivers and streams and so forth, just not as much as you would expect. I would love to hear like a freshwater podcast, you know, how to protect lakes or something like that. I think that would be great. But the ocean's big enough, so it's easier to talk about that. But I mean, like, coastal systems, like, you know, rivers and lakes and streams have an effect on the ocean, so it definitely comes up in a lot of my stories.
Have you read the book Blue Ocean?
The Blue Ocean?
Yeah, it's a self-help motivational book about how to like stand out in the market. And so I'm curious, the fact that you choose
the Blue Ocean strategy. Yeah.
Wait, don't tell me you read that book and decided to say, okay, I'm going to talk about oceans.
No. I've worked in marine biology and oceans for my entire life, and including science communication. So no, that wasn't it. But that's funny. It got me when I first saw the book. A friend of mine had that book and just on his shelf, and I was like, "What are you doing reading about the ocean?" He goes, "No, it's not the ocean. It's the Blue Ocean strategy. It's like a business strategy." Yeah. I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, because I was like, oh well, maybe that's why you chose the oceans. Like, why not freshwater? Is it okay? Why not freshwater? Yeah, why not freshwater? Because is it because you know, your work, your experience, your background specializing in the oceans, or is it just because the ocean is bigger? I mean, just freshwaters and all those other things there that we could have talked about.
Well, absolutely. I think for me, I've always been fascinated with the ocean. So even, like I said, growing up not around an ocean, I was always fascinated with what I couldn't have. Like I couldn't see the ocean every day. It wasn't until I was about 9 years old that I went to see the ocean. And that was like in the Gulf of Mexico. And that was really cool. I really enjoyed that part. But I always was fascinated with the ocean. And so I followed marine biology path. I became a marine biologist. I worked, in the Gulf of Mexico. I worked in the Arctic. I worked in the Atlantic, all around North America. And I did work in the Great Lakes, and I did work in a lot of freshwater rivers just because this is where I live. But it was kind of like a mix of stuff. And so when I started the podcast, because I lived in Ontario, I wanted to start a podcast on how can I stay connected to all the people that I've met that work on the ocean while still working or while still living in Ontario and not directly working for an organization that works on the ocean. So I was working for the government, the federal government of Canada in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I still wanted to stay connected and stay updated on ocean news and ocean stuff. And I was like, well, if I'm going to stay connected on it, I want to talk about it. And I still want to make connections within there because I never know if I'm going to move or if I'm going to get a different job. And that way I'll still network with everybody else that I talk to. So that's sort of where that came from. And then just the general interest. But I did work in freshwater for quite some time, for about 6 or 7 years. Actually, longer than that, probably over 10 years with different jobs.
Okay, so, or like, well, what if it wasn't ocean? It would have been how to protect freshwater.
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it would be like how to protect the lakes, or what about the lakes, or something like that.
How to protect the ocean. It has a ring to it, and on your lips, like how to protect the ocean. Okay, when you've been doing the podcast for 10 years now. Wow.
Mm-hmm. It's a long time.
That's a long time. That's what called you're totally there in the space. Yeah, you're totally there. Wow. You mentioned that you started the podcast just as a way to have fun and also have conversations with people in the industry and to network with them. I'm curious, how's that experience been like for the past 10 years?
It's been amazing. I've probably conducted, I'm at episode 1840 right now that I've just recorded. And I do, like, I'm at 3 days a week right now. So I it's constant, but I've learned so much about the ocean and how to communicate the ocean to a general audience. So an audience that's not scientific, so like I learned how to speak in a way where I can take, a study that somebody's talking to me about, and I can bring it into words that everybody can understand. So take away all the scientific jargon, take away anything that's complex, and just be like, this is what you need to know. Like, that's what I do. Like, my audience is important to me, and they're here to find out how they can protect the ocean. So my goal in every time is to give them that, that knowledge, call to action by the end of the episode, is to say, hey, this is what we can do to make this situation better if it's a situation that's not good. If it's a situation that's good, then this is how you make it even better, or this is something how we can celebrate and how we can use it to do something else. So the audience has always like kept me, humbled and making like, let's just make sure that the audience gets as much as possible they can get from either the guest or from like whatever I've brought them as a solo episode. So it's been an interesting journey in that way of what I've been able to learn of how to communicate. And with that, I've learned how, like, different ways of storytelling. I've experimented with different ways of interviewing. I'm always looking how to, like, make it more interesting so that people will stay longer and stay on, like, keeping that retention all the way to the end. I've done a couple of, like, now I'm at the point where people want to be on my show, which was really cool. Is people actually seek me out. I've got PR agencies who will seek me out to be like, hey, we want to be on your podcast because, we really like what you're doing. It's like, all right, cool. Like, let's do it. And so with that, it's not just me going out and seeking somebody, it's them coming to me. So sometimes, like, I'll have businesses on that are eco-friendly, that are truly eco-friendly. And we talk about how hard it is to make a product that's truly sustainable. Or, like, I had the guy from 4 Oceans on, and he was telling me how he started Four Oceans and how like he's gotten to a point where they've picked up over 44, million pieces. I think it's million or billions pieces of plastic. It's huge. It's this huge amount just by selling a bracelet. That's how they've been able to do it. And creating that bracelet and what that would cost. It's just been quite the journey and learning what everybody's doing. And, what I really learned that you don't have to be a scientist to help the ocean. You can be anybody. And I think and people need help in how to protect the ocean. They need that guidance of how you can actually protect the ocean. Cause not everybody's a scientist. Not everybody wants to be a scientist, but where are you going to put your support? Depending on the country you live in, depending on what you're doing, you want to put support into a business. You want to support an organization. You want to just go out and do it yourself. Like there's all these different methods of how you can protect the ocean. My job is to bring that to them. And I've been able to, kind of really spread my wings in terms of understanding how many different ways there are to protect the ocean.
Quick break. Before we continue, I'd love to invite you to join the My Podcast Story newsletter. Each week, I share highlights from our guest stories, behind-the-scenes podcasting tips, and resources to help you grow your own show. You can sign up at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, well, over the course of 10 years, how has what does your production flow look like? You have an idea for the episode. What does it go through to eventually become? Oh yeah, you can listen to this episode on how to protect your ocean.
It's changed quite a bit. And there's a few reasons why. So I used to do all the editing, up until about a year ago, just over a year ago.
Like 9 years ago.
Yeah. 9 years. So 9 years of editing, but it used to be all audio until I decided to go video as well.
Okay.
But what I did is because I was putting it out so frequently, the editing was very minimal. So it was very raw. I believe strongly that podcasting is something that should be, it could be anything anybody wants to be. It used to be that we would be subjected to radio. We had to listen to the radio. We have to listen to the programming on the radio. Now you can pretty much start a podcast about anything. I think there's a podcast on how you can actually learn to play the banjo. Like you can actually learn how to play the banjo just through an audio podcast. Wow. And so I like the fact that I can just keep it as raw as I want it to be. So if I make a mistake, I may cut that piece out, but for the most part, I leave it all in. And even my interviews, I leave it all in because I want the scientists to have trust in me that I have their entire story in, other than I'll edit maybe some awkward pauses or anything like that. But for the most part, I leave it in. But, with the way I had it all set up is I have my music, my intro music, and I have my outro music, and I would just put it together. So it would take me like 10 minutes to edit, especially when I was doing 7 days a week. So I would do I would spend most of my time researching the episode, recording the episode, taking 10 minutes to, figure everything out, edit it, and then I would upload it, and then I would do the show notes. I would do the show notes all myself. No, at the time there was no AI to do any of the show notes or anything like that. Now I do all so I did all the show notes. That whole process would take me probably when it was just audio, probably about an hour and a half for each episode, right? Which isn't bad. And then I decided, hey, you know what? A lot of people it took me a while to get on the video podcast bandwagon because I wasn't it's not really a podcast if it's video because it's not shared through an RSS feed, which is fine. But then what happens is I thought about it and I was like, if I put this podcast on video, I'm opening myself up to a brand new audience.
Yeah, distribution.
Right? Now, with that said, I had my audio podcast would get uploaded to a different channel as an audio file.
Yeah,
and it still does.
Audiograms.
Yeah, because I wanted it for YouTube Music because YouTube Music started to do podcasts. So I was like, okay, I'll keep it there. But I wasn't getting a lot of views on YouTube itself. And so I was like, okay, let's try recording what I'm doing. And I'll just record as I'm speaking, which is kind of funny because when I did it without the video, it was so much easier. Yeah, because I didn't have to care how I looked.
How you look.
Right? You can with an audio, you can just go in your shorts, no shirt.
Yeah.
You just go.
today I
Yeah.
have something to say, and
Yeah.
just focus on your voice.
Yeah, and you don't even have to look into the camera. Like, you can look all over the place. I didn't need lights or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I put the video on, I like froze. So it took me a while to kind of figure that out. But once I got used to it, I was like, okay, I'm starting to go on YouTube, and I was like, how do I grow on YouTube? And I started to look at a lot of the other shows that are on there, not necessarily video podcasts, but what worked on video. And what I thought is like, I'm going to have to edit in like some B-roll, put some nice pictures, like to make it visually appealing as I'm talking, to throw in something that will, kind of entertain the audience member, whoever's watching, the viewer, to say, hey, this is actually really entertaining. He's putting in like, there's a little editing in terms, sometimes like it'll zoom in on me, sometimes it'll zoom out, and sometimes they'll put, B-roll, like videos and all that kind of stuff. So it took a little bit more of an investment in time, which now expanded my editing time, because I did the editing for that and it would be a little bit more. So I went from like an hour and a half to like 3.5 hours per episode. Now that's 3 days a week, 3.5 hours. Plus I have, a job, plus I have 2 kids, I want to spend time with, plus I have other hobbies. So it took up way too much time. So in January of this year, I hired a video editor to do my video edit and my audio editing, essentially. So I just ripped the audio from there. And I've been doing that ever since. And I love it because it's allowed me to take more time to research the episode, so I can bring more to the episode than not, than trying to rush through it and do everything else. So that's all great. And then from a promotion standpoint, I never really promoted my podcast before. I just played it. Like, I would just publish it and hope people listened. And it was great because it worked. Like, people were listening. So that was nice. But then I started to do more promotion. And again, I wanted to streamline it. So I went out and I got a software called Metricool. And that allows me to schedule the posts. So I would take clips. I use Riverside. I would take clips. I would edit those clips, and then I would put them on Metricool and just be able to schedule them all out over a 2-day period for each episode, between the publication of each episode. And what was interesting about that, I never really thought social media would bring me more views, which it doesn't really, or more downloads. What it does, though, is it makes it seem like I'm really busy. So I get more peers, like at work, or, friends like, oh yeah, you're doing a lot of stuff on the internet. I'm like, I've always been doing a lot of stuff on the internet. I just never posted about it. So it makes people are like, oh, you're really working on this podcast. So it's just like more of the appearance. Yeah. So I just have clips of my podcast, and I'm like, oh, did you go watch the podcast? They're like, no, I'm not watching the podcast. I heard all your clips there. So it doesn't really help in views, but it helps make it look like I have a podcast, and they like the sound, and they like what I'm saying and stuff like that. So it's been interesting at that point.
Yeah. Wow. So what you're telling me now is the major thing that you could possibly say has grown the podcast is you reaching out to people, having great conversations, and showing up consistently over the years.
Yeah. 100%. Consistency has been my key for 10 years. I was listening to a video one time. It was have you ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah, of course I know.
Okay, so Gary V, right? You've heard of him. A lot of people have heard of him, and so I remember listening to him speak, and in one of the videos, he's like, I may not be the best speaker, or I may not be the most knowledgeable of a particular topic, but I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to outpost you. I'm going to outwork you. And I kind of got it from that. It's like, I may not grow huge every episode, but I'm going to grow bigger and bigger every episode.
Because I show up consistently.
Absolutely. Like, my frequency of publishing may change over time to going from like once a week to 5 days a week to 3 days a week to 7 days a week. But people will know when I'm putting it out. They'll know if it's 3 days a week. It's been 3 days a week for the last like 2-3 years. Okay, well, we know Andrew's going to put one out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that's what I try and keep. Now, it's not always like that, but like maybe once or twice a year I miss something because I'm burnt out, or I'm sick, or whatever that happens, right? But yeah, I do that consistently, and it's kind of helped grow. And to be honest, it's the same thing happened when I went to YouTube. I started to just be like, I'm just going to post I post my audio podcasts every day. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they get an episode. And like, you know, I see it's kind of funny because I'm not sure if you see it. If you ever watch YouTube a lot, I watch a lot of YouTube, and you always see like gurus, you know, who are like, oh, this, you know, I started a podcast a month ago and now, or I started a show a month ago and now I'm monetized on YouTube in a month or like 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever. And I was like, look, I'm not going to grow that big because I know from podcasting that you don't grow that big. So I assume that YouTube is this thing. I may get a video that goes crazy every once in a while, but if I continue to consistently post, the number of hours people watch and the number of subscribers I have will grow slowly. Yeah. And then maybe one day it'll just take off. But at this point, I'm just going to go slow and steady, right? And I'm going to win that race. I'm going to outwork everybody else on YouTube that's talking about the oceans. They may be better than me in telling stories. They may dedicate more time to the editing and that kind of stuff, but I am going to bring the amount of stories that I need to bring to inform people of how to protect the ocean. And I've done that. And Wisdom, I can tell you at this point in time, I hit the first monetization level in about a year and a half. So I can do memberships. I just got accepted into the program like not too long ago. And that's a huge feat. I'm not making money off of it, but it's like, oh, that opens up some more things, and it kind of makes you, it kind of shows you that you can get there if you just continually post. So consistency has always been my key. When people ask me like, oh, what happens? Like, how do you grow so fast, or how do you get so many downloads? I'm like, keep posting, just keep posting. Right. That's the big thing.
One of the things I see from this is that, you know, over the years when you start posting, you get your own actual data points to now see that, oh yeah, people love it when I talk about this. Oh yeah, this guest, people really love this guest. People listen more. But you don't get that kind of data when you're not posting, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like I know that when I talk about whales, or I talk about great white sharks, or I talk about whales eating great white sharks, I'm going to get a huge hit. If I talk about deep sea mining, I'm going to get a huge hit. I don't do it every time, but I do it when it's appropriate. When the story comes out and I feel like the need to share it, that's when I do it. And it actually hits big. And then there are some that'll hit big that I never expected. So normally on YouTube, I get around anywhere between 50 and 300 views per episode, which is fantastic. Like it's awesome. But then every once in a while, I'll get one that gets 1,000. I had one this summer that went to like almost 10,000.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is great. I've made it. Boom. I'm done. You know, I'm going to get 10,000 from then on. No, it doesn't happen that way. But that one hit. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So it allowed me to gain more subscribers. I think it got me like 200 and some odd subscribers. And I got a lot of comments and everything like that. And my watch time went up like quite a bit. And it got me closer to the program, like to the monetization program. But it was also, it was kind of cool, like just to see like, oh, that hit pretty big. So you try and duplicate it every once in a while, but it never really gets. Sometimes it just, the timeline lines up, the title lines up, the thumbnail's good, and then you just kind of figure it out from there. So it's a big experiment. But I wouldn't have known, like if that was my first episode and I got 9,000 or 9,000 views, and then I posted the next one and only got 2 views, I'm like, oh, that sucks. I'm done.
Yeah.
But because I've been posting on YouTube for a year and a half, the 9,000 one, that's cool, but that's an anomaly. Like that doesn't happen every day. I'm in the 50s to, 300 or whatever it is.
Well, one of the key expenses for currently is the video editor. So I'm curious, like you do 3 episodes every week, and in a month that's about 12 episodes in a month. How much are you currently spending to bring out 12 episodes every month?
Well, that's a good question. So I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines that I pay around $7 to $8 an hour US to do the episodes. Now, the episodes don't take that long to do. They take maybe a few hours to do. So it's not a huge investment that I'm not willing to take.
I want to get something clear. Is the virtual assistant the same person as the video editor, or are we talking about different persons?
Sorry, yeah, it's a virtual assistant that's a video editor. Yeah, okay, so like a virtual video editor. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I pay her, I think it's like $8 US an hour, and then depending on if it's a solo episode, depending on how long it is, she'll take a couple of hours to 3 hours. And then if it's an interview episode where the interview kind of stays the same, I do the editing for that one. And then she does like the intro and the outro. That only takes an hour. So it's not too bad. So I usually try and do 1 or 2 interviews per week and a 1 or 2 solo episodes a week. So for a total of 3. So it depends on what's going on and how many interviews I have.
Okay. In my head, I'm like, okay, what would you
Probably
say
about
is
like
the average
$300-400 US a month, essentially.
month? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Uh, yeah. Why am I excited? One of the things I noticed about your podcast, I know we mentioned it at the very beginning of the podcast, is the fact that your podcast is very clear and definite. And so when a lot of persons are searching for ocean stuff, your podcast will come up. And so that might have contributed to the growth of your podcast. Who knows?
100%. Yeah. Like I try and do that quite a bit. So I have a tool called TubeBuddy to help me on YouTube to get the right titles, so the right keywords for titles. And it has like an algorithm that it works based on the search volume for that keyword, as well as, you know, the keyword optimization. I don't know exactly how it works, but I use that. And when I get into like, I put in a bunch of keywords even before I do the show.
Yeah.
And so I used to do it after I did the show, after I record and everything, and tried to like work backwards. But now I just do the title first and see what will hit big. And then I'll take that title and I'll transfer it over to, I use Libsyn to upload my podcast, like the audio podcast, and I'll put the title in there and I'll put the show notes and everything like that. So it's pretty much the same when I do that. I do use ChatGPT to help me with creating the titles, and then I'll switch it around. I'll say, give me like 5 different titles, and then I'll use like what I think is the best using that keyword. But yeah, it's the idea is really, let's optimize the title, the thumbnail, and the first sentence of the description to see how it does. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you know, like I said, 50 views is 50 people in a classroom.
Yeah,
it works to me.
That's a lot. If I have that class, I feel like I'm raising the next generation.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned Metricool. I'm curious. How much do you spend every month for Metricool?
That's a good question. I think I'm at probably about like $24 US a month. So that's Canadian. It's about $30, maybe a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sad because I'm interviewing you after I saw a very kind of nice deal, because I don't know if you know of AppSumo. It's
Yes.
a site, they sell lifetime deals. They had a social media tool called Late. The name of the tool is Late. And I bought the lifetime deal. And I'm like, oh, if I had seen you, I would have, you know, to get the tool. And that would have, you know, I think the highest plan was about $3.99. But you know, there were plans in between the range, and so with that you get access
all the time. You just pay
once,
and you're good.
You don't get to pay again, and that kind of saves the podcast cost. You know, $20.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It's funny you mentioned that. One thing I am doing now is reviewing like all these different services that I have and how much I'm paying for these services, because you know, they do add up. You know, we get these monthly charges. They don't seem like they're too bad, but after a while, when you look at it, you're like, oh, hold on a sec. Because now, like with YouTube and adding, you know, copyright-free videos and copyright-free music and all that kind of stuff, you know, it adds up. It adds up quite a bit. And so to do that every year, it kind of takes up, you know, sometimes you don't have a choice. Like sometimes you have like an AppSumo, which gives you a choice for like for a software piece that's really nice. And then other times it doesn't, like you have to pay monthly. But yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I feel this urge to probably go through your tools and give recommendations.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, you mentioned Libsyn. I know Libsyn, they pay for storage upload, something like that.
Yeah, it's based on your monthly cost is based on how much, like how big a file you can, like how much memory, I guess, or size you do per month. Yeah. I do like Libsyn though, in terms of, because it's like $20 a month.
You spend $20 a month for like 12 episodes?
No, actually I pay more. I pay $40, 30 something dollars American. Yeah.
What if you do 7 episodes in it, like 5 episodes every day in a week? That's like 20 episodes in a month. Would the price go up?
Well, it depends. It depends on how big the file sizes are. Like, so when I changed from 3 episodes a week to 7 episodes a week, my file size is never, like total file size never changed. And this is why. When I did the 3 times a week, each episode was 45 minutes, give or take. Say like 45 to 50 minutes, because I covered 3 stories of 15 minutes long each in one episode. right? So that's 9 stories. And so I talked for quite a bit. I talked for about 45 to 50 minutes. Now, what I did when I went to 7 episodes, the reason why I went to 7 episodes was because when I looked, it was right around Apple Podcast came out with their metrics. So you can go into Apple Podcast Connect and you can look at the retention for each episode. And what I was seeing was that about just over halfway of the episode, like 60%, 65%, people were dropping off. People were leaving. Could have been just like the commute. It could have been anything, right? How long, why they didn't stay on. But then I realized, I'm like, well, people aren't even listening to the final story. And so I'm like, what's the point of doing 3 stories if they're not going to stay that long? So I was like, all right, how about I do this? How about instead of doing 3 stories an episode, I do 1 story an episode, and I spend about 15 to 20 minutes on that. Yeah. So basically what I was doing is I was taking 1 episode, breaking it down into 3 episodes. Yeah. So I really only had to do, 7 stories. So it's really 2 episodes and a bit of my, 3 episodes. So the memory actually never changed. So I never had to change the price of what I was paying. Yeah. The one time I went up in price was because I decided Libsyn came out with an app that you can use. So it's, just for your podcast, like people can actually like click on it, but they stopped that. So I don't pay that much anymore.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm aware of Libsyn. I really don't know if there are peculiar advantages why you use Libsyn, but there are other tools like Captivate and Transistor. Like Captivate, you pay $19, you get unlimited upload space. The only thing you get to pay is, the total amount of downloads you get in a month is about 30,000 downloads, which is a lot. I know how many downloads you get, right? Well, if the downloads increase, that's when you pay more. That's like good for budding podcasters like me that don't have a lot of downloads yet. And you can 100%. Do unlimited podcasts. Yeah, you can do unlimited podcasts, unlimited storage, unlimited everything.
Unlimited everything except when it comes to the downloads. And I love that. Like I think that's great. I stay with Libsyn for a couple of reasons. One, I've been with them since the beginning. Yeah. And 2, they're very into privacy. And so they're very into protecting your feed because there's a lot of other places, and I don't know about Captivate, but there were some other hosts where people were going on and just taking the episodes and then making their own podcast with the same episodes, and it would duplicate the episode. And so Libsyn was very adamant about that. And they're like, we're going to protect your feed. This is how you do it. It was 1 button and it was already included. I didn't have to pay any extra. And they're just very, like, they had like a show that they would do every week. They just actually ended it this week. And that we would be able to listen to, and they'd give you tips and stuff like that. So it was more of like I stayed on it because I don't like to move a lot. I like the like service that they provided. Yeah. And you're just kind of like, you're just loyal to them because they've been serving me well, and they've given me a lot of information over the years. And it's a bit of like a thank you kind of thing that I continue to go. And it's not like a crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
And so,
it makes sense. If I do in the future, if I see any podcast deal on AppSumo, I might send it your way and say,
there you go.
This lifetime deal. I don't know.
Please
you might get, because I currently use Cast Magic. I don't know if you're aware of it. So
I've never heard of it. No.
So what it does is that once I finish my episode, I upload it to Cast Magic, and when I upload it to Cast Magic, it generates all the written text for me. So I've created all these prompts and added it to Cast Magic, and it generates the title for me, generates the description, the chapter, the timestamps, everything. Even generates a blog post for me, and all I just need to do is copy and paste.
That's awesome.
And that's it. And so it does save me a ton of time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I use ChatGPT for most of my show notes now, and it saves me so much time. And like I said, I'll alter it a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I just take the transcript. It does everything for me after that. And, it's not perfect, which is fine because I have to alter it anyway. I feel like just from a creativity standpoint, I have to alter it. So I do that. But it's definitely, it's definitely saved hours off of my workflow over the week, which is nice. Yeah. When you don't have that many hours.
I feel that there are a certain fixed cost, like Riverside, right? It's fixed.
Yeah, Riverside is nice.
If you do a lot of interview, it doesn't increase.
No, exactly, and so many other options. Like I want to give Riverside its respect because I've been using Riverside since like
they might increase the price soon.
Yeah, 2019 or 2020.
Yeah,
and they have changed so much. They've increased the amount of functionality so much. Like now they do clips that they pull out for you. There's like an editing feature in there where they've really developed. You can go live, all these other features, and I've never had to increase my price as they provided new features. The only time I increased is when I started to go. I tried to go live a couple times. I increased
that's a different feature. Yeah,
but that's a different service. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so I have to give them their respect because, you know, they continue to provide value for their customers without asking to raise the price, and it's a great price. So yeah.
And I think the live it's free, but you have limited features and the watermark your videos. So
Yeah. So if you pay a little extra, I think it's like $10 a month extra. And if you go live,
$10,
it's worth it. Like if you go live often, it's definitely worth it, you know?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Wow. Riverside, Metricool, ChatGPT, of course.
Yeah.
Libsyn, and what else am I missing?
I use AWeber for my newsletter. So when I do post an episode, I'll prepare a newsletter, and then I'll send that out. So that's something. I do use LinkedIn, their newsletter feature too, which is free. And then I think that's pretty much, I would say that's pretty much
what about the
it.
website?
PodPage.
Yeah,
I use PodPage, which is great. I don't love the main page, like the home page that I have. I do like how easy it is to like subscribe and go to all the other things. But it's like I have a network site because I have a bunch of other podcasts that I support. But I may change soon just because of the expense and trying to like I said, there's a lot of monthly bills that add up that you're like, do I really need something like this? Is it really helping me? Yeah.
I mean, if you could do WordPress, it's just that it will cost, right? We have a lot of upfront costs. But if you do WordPress, you just need to pay for the hosting.
Yeah.
And the domain is like $10, $11 per year, right?
Yeah.
Annually, and pretty much that's it. And most hosting are really, really cheap because you can connect other websites without having to pay extra. Well, it depends on, but most people don't have that technical background to figure out how to put all those things in place.
Yeah, I had a WordPress site for a long time. And then when I went to PodPage, I stopped it. And like I think now I have this other app that I use. It's kind of like an AI app that you can build apps, like one of those vibe coding things. Yeah. And I built a site. And so now I'm just testing it and seeing if I can use it. And that will help me like reduce a cost. Not that I like PodPage. I like what they do. I like their service.
Well, I mean,
got the newsletter and everything like that. It's just
it costs money.
It's another. I'm just looking at trying to save costs.
Yeah,
really.
shortlist.
Yeah.
Well, I think I saw a plugin recently that what it does is that once you connect your RSS feed and all that, once you publish an episode, it will pull it in the episode, the embed code, it will pull in the description and everything you put on your hosting company. And so your website's episodes will be updated on your website automatically without you having to go in and publish every time you drop an episode. That's for WordPress, of course.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like Libsyn had a plugin for WordPress to show like, and it kind of puts it out like in a nice player and stuff like that. You can color code it, you can change the colors and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. There's so many, like, I think the thing is there's so many options, and I think it really depends on, for those of you, like your audience members who are listening, to be like, oh, what do I really want to start a podcast? Like, sounds really expensive. You can do the basics. Like I started with the basics. Like I've been in this for 10 years and I experiment all the time. Yeah, I experiment all the time. Right?
Yeah, just have your RSS feed.
Yeah, you just have your RSS, just publish like that. And I think that the biggest thing is get used to creating great content. That's the biggest thing. Like I grew based on content. It wasn't just because I have something like Metricool that I can schedule my things or anything like that. That's not how I grow. I grow because the content is there, and that's really helpful.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm looking at the time and I'm like, but there's one question I always like ask my audience. I said, my guest.
Yeah.
Why did I say audience? What happened is that you were a host, and so. But now you're a guest on my podcast.
Yes,
and so it just flipped my head. I was like, what do I say? I was like, there's a question I like asking my guest, and that is, does the podcast make money?
It doesn't make like money where I can survive on it, or off of it. In the past, I've had shows sponsored. I've had people come on where like organizations actually paid to have like a couple of episodes, like a series of episodes. I do have one right now that I do where I charge like a monthly fee for them to have their stuff on and to show off their organization. I am in the midst of, so I have the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I also have the Beyond Jaws podcast that I co-host with another scientist. It's basically all about sharks and shark careers and shark science and conservation. And then now my goal is to build a network of podcasts that have to do with important things that are going on in the ocean. So the one I'm on right now, if I could plug it, is I have I want to start a seagrass podcast called The Seagrass Effect. And that will be interviewing people who are doing research, who are doing restoration and conservation of seagrass habitats, which are very important habitats for biodiversity, for protecting the coastline, for solidifying the sand and preventing erosion. And so it's a very important habitat that doesn't often get talked about, because coral reefs, people like to talk more about coral reefs. And so I've started a crowdfunding campaign to basically like, hey, if we want to start this, I need to have these costs paid for. And so, if you go to speakupforblue.com/seagrass, you can put in a donation and support the podcast. So it's like trying to, yes, make money, but also, every time, someone pays, like donates, a portion goes to restoring a seagrass habitat somewhere in the world. And so it's a kind of a cool thing. It's the first time I've done like a podcast where we have an actual physical outcome, not only like connecting research, but also donating money to a project that's there to restore and bring back seagrass meadows where they've been lost before. So yeah, like it hasn't been monetized consistently as much as I've been putting out episodes, but I'm at the point now where I'm ready to make some more money off of it, but also bring more value to the audience as well as the scientific community.
Just quickly, I know we're coming to the end of the episode, but when you did monetize, how did you monetize? Was it through ads, sponsorship, donations? What was it?
A little bit of everything. So it's more ads, but like it wasn't ads where you see ads on like a Joe Rogan podcast or something like that. It was more ads specific to the niche. So I would have conferences, like societies that put on conferences would come on and be like, hey, would you advertise this podcast or this conference? I said, yeah, sure, no problem. How do we want to work this deal? Sometimes it was for like they'd give me money, or other times they would actually fly me to the conference. Like I went to a conference in Malaysia because they flew me out and had me cover the podcast or cover the conference on my podcast. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll do that. Like that's a great opportunity. So there's sometimes organizations and societies will do that. I've also created other podcasts. Like I've probably helped launch or launched about 5 to 10 ocean podcasts that are either defunct or not part of, I'm not associated with it anymore. And then of course during COVID, I went through and I started editing and managing podcasts for entrepreneurs and naturopaths and physiotherapists and so forth. So I have a lot of experience like running podcasts. Now I want to run it in my own fashion where I have control over it and I can put out content as much as I want, essentially. So there's going to be a seagrass podcast, hopefully by the end of next year or by the middle of next year. That's the goal.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's been exciting listening to your podcast story. Wow. And you did share the project of starting your own podcast network, specifically for sea life and what do you call it now?
Yeah. The Seagrass Effect.
Yeah. No, that's a specific podcast. There's a name they call stuff that has to do with water bodies, like ocean life. I don't want to say ocean life because then that's just ocean. I feel like you might expand into fresh waters and all those other lakes and all those other things.
Yeah, like coastal habitats or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay. If where can listeners listen to your podcast and also learn more about the work you're doing and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. They could go to speakupforblue.com. That will show you the way to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast, as well as the Beyond Jaws podcast. And then if you want to get a hold of me on Instagram, you can do so at How to Protect the Ocean, all one word.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrew. I had so much ideas, and I'm ready to implement them.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
Well,
I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you accepted my invitation. It takes two to tango.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll put the links mentioned in the description and the show notes so listeners can click and go directly to the site. And yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I hope you enjoyed listening to this journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And don't forget to join the newsletter at mypodcaststory.com/join for more stories and podcasting insights. Until next time, keep telling your story because someone out there needs to hear it.